That's right. New feature, by the way. Now Zoom yells at you whenever I start recording. Apologies for that. um, okay. So we are taking a look at performance assessments today. Um, kind of getting our way through the end of chapter 6 here in your textbook. There's not a lot left. We have in terms of performance assessments, there is kind of a weird breakdown in your book. Like technically, your bench press and your leg press assessments, which are both like 1 rep max assessments, also fall under the category of performance because it's how well you're performing in these specific exercises. But your textbook will classify them as strength assessments. It's a little bit of a different thing compared to what we see here in the PowerPoint. And NASM doesn't test you on like categories, so you don't have to worry about like their weird uh, um, inconsistency there. But just so that you guys know, it may say that we're doing bench and leg press today, but we're actually going to get into those tomorrow. So today and tomorrow are both actually pretty light days. We really want to spend a little bit more of our time talking about the hard stuff, which is getting those muscle lists memorized, taking a look at like what's kind of causing these postural distortions and things like that. These assessments, the only thing you need to know are a couple key specific like ways and how to perform them and what their purpose is. So the big thing I want you to pay attention to for the first, as we're in the PowerPoint here, pay attention to any specific like numbers that I tell you. For instance, the Davies test is 15 seconds, right? So like that's a piece of info to kind of grab onto because it makes a really good test question, right? It's like how, the blah, blah, blah assessment where someone touches their hands for 15 seconds is and then it would be called the Davies test. And then understand like what their purposes are, right? Their purposes are, the Davies test is upper body agility. The shark skill test is lower body agility. So pretty easy, pretty basic, but we'll have a chance to talk about the posture, which is sort of the more complicated stuff. So we'll circle back around to that again. So looking at our performance assessment, so we talk about like what the purpose of a performance assessment is. It's used for your clients who are trying to improve overall like athleticism. And what's cool about these is performance assessments are just you versus future you. Like there's no standardized way that these assessments need to be performed. Like if we look at the 3-minute step test, right? We based on your age, right? If we look at if I pull up this little table here, oh good, this is working again. 3-minute step test. If we look at the YMCA step test, you tell me how old you are. And you're like, I'm 29 years old, right? And that puts you between 26 and 35. I know that your heart rate should recover somewhere between like 51 and 102 beats per minute. If it's, recovers a little bit slower than that, we know that like we need to work on our cardio a little bit. And for women, same thing. Let's say you're a woman between like the age of like 56 and 65, right? And your heart rate recovers to anywhere between 60 and 118. That's what we're aiming for, like that's between excellent, good, or average. We kind of have these standardized tables to kind of work against. Same thing is true for the overhead squat. We kind of know what a good squat looks like. We have a standardized table of things that we look at. But your performance assessments, there's really nothing like that. There's no performances, you don't need to be able to run a 40-yard dash in X number of seconds, you don't really need to be able to do like the shark skill test in X amount of time. This is really just a chance for us to kind of have like a baseline statistic and look for performance improvements. How well is the program working? Are we consistently getting better? Which is great because like the pressure is off for performance assessments when it comes to your clients. These are very, very optional, but I love to do them with my clients because it's also a really fun way to see improvement, like it's a really fun way to just test current you versus future you, you know? So there's no standard table for how well a client should perform in these assessments, but it is an excellent way for your clients to see improvements over time. You know, we're not worried about getting their waist to hip ratio, underneath a specific number here. We're just looking to see, like, Thomas, how well you did on day 1 versus how you're doing now at it's day 31, Kenny, we're looking for improvements from your first month to your 6th month. You know what I mean? So looking at this first one, this is going to be called the Davies test. The Davies test is a performance assessment that is designed to assess your upper extremity agility and stabilization. So the idea here, and that's the big thing I want you to like kind of latch on to for today. It is a performance assessment that assesses your upper extremity agility and your upper extremity stabilization. So obviously, if your client does have like really bad shoulder rounding, really bad shoulder elevation, and they don't really have adequate core strength, their arms fall forward. If they have like a lot of upper body dysfunction that you have observed in the overhead squat or in the pushing and the pulling assessment before you get to your sort of performance category, performance assessment like sections, then it may be you may decide to bail out. Rather than actually perform these assessments with your client. If they don't have proper shoulder stability, this isn't really a very safe assessment to do. So it's not necessarily suitable for everybody. This is why our performance assessments are very, very, very optional. So if your client is sort of exhibiting those major alterations in posture, it may be the right choice for you to decide not to perform this assessment. But the way this assessment works, and like I said, this is it is really fun. I do recommend doing this with your client. It's really fun to just kind of like do this kind of goofy movement pattern, and get a chance to do something that's a little more non-traditional in a gym setting. And what you're going to do is you are going to begin by placing 2 pieces of tape 36 inches apart. That's another number I want you guys to attach on to and kind of keep up in your noggin. Two pieces of tape 36 inches apart, and then you're going to have your client position themselves in a push-up position with their hands on each of those 36 inches, those 36-inch marks. Okay, so 2 pieces 36 inches apart, they place their hands on both of them. Me personally, I tell my clients to line up their middle finger. I don't know, just because that's how I like to do it. And then they're going to stay in that push-up position. Don't let them, drop their hips. Don't let them round their shoulders. They're going to try to stay in a good alignment here. And then what you're going to have them do is they are going to be in that push-up position. They're going to reach across and touch their right hand to their left hand. Then they're going to return back to that initial piece of tape. And then they're going to reach to touch their left to their right. And they're going to go back and forth just like this. They're going to get as many touches as they can in 15 seconds. And you're going to do 3 trials. So a lot of times people will improve every single round. They'll get a little bit faster, unless they've done this assessment before, in which case, you might see it like plateau a little bit. But basically, instruct the client to move his or her right hand to touch their left hand. Perform as many alternating touches as you can for 15 seconds, and then give them 60 seconds of rest in between sets. You're going to do 3 sets of that, 3 trials of that. And basically, you're just looking to see, does this number go up? Like maybe they got 18 touches the first time, 18 touches the second time, and 19 touches the third time. They got a little bit, more used to it, and they were kind of ready to go, right? You train them for 30 days, they come back, and now it's like, hey, we're going to do all of our reassessment stuff. We're going to see, has your overhead squat improved? Has your YMCA step test improved? How are you feeling, now in comparison to how we were at the end? So a lot of times, this is part of our kind of training process, right? I like to reassess my clients every 4 to 8 weeks personally. And it's always like kind of marked down on your calendar. You let your client know. It's like, hey, this is when we're going to be reassessing. You know, if my client is like a weight loss client, you know, I'll do certain pieces of that assessment consistently, you know, because we want to give our client like short-term feedback. So I might test like their, you know, weight once a week, their body fat percentage once a week, you know what I mean? So that's something that like we'll track consistently. But let's say like, you know, I'm trying to do like a little bit more of an advanced assessment. Every 30 days, I might redo their circumference measurements. I might redo their YMCA step test. I might redo something like the Davies test, you know? So we're just looking to see like, are there improvements? And if your client comes back 30 days into their routine and they're like, you know, getting ready to do their exercise and they got 18 touches. They've got a record of 19 touches, and then you make them do it again, and they smash their record. They're like they get all the way to 24 or something. You know, that's a big improvement in 15 seconds. You know, that shows us that the program is working. It's a fun thing to kind of throw at your clients. That's really good for sort of increasing motivation. And there's other performance assessments out there. Like, don't get me wrong, you can make anything into a performance assessment actually. Like if your client has like, you know, I had two clients. They were, yeah, like still working, but like a little bit older. And they had like some magazine. I'm going to say it was AARP magazine. I don't know if it actually was, but it was like a magazine for seniors. And they were reading in this magazine, they were like, you know, one of the things that they can test your athleticism is how well you can get up from the floor to a standing position without using the assistance of anything around you. So they were like, can we do that as an assessment? And like, you know, they were like goofing around. This is like a very, this couple that I used to train, they were very competitive with one another. So I just imagine them sitting around at home and like reading this magazine, and they were like, you know, John was probably like, I can do this totally faster than you. Like, and so what they did is they were like, they wanted to lay on the floor and then get up from the floor onto their feet as fast as possible, and test how long it took them. And they weren't allowed to use like a chair or a table or anything like that. And so they did that, but it was like, you know, they had me like time them with like a stopwatch. And it was fun. Like we worked on like a core strength routine, you know, that was designed to make them better at that. But I was like, all right, I'll do you one better. Let's say you have to get up off the floor, but you are not allowed to use your hands. And they were like, oh, that's way harder. And I was like, yeah, that's way harder. Like, let's do it, you know? Like, so we adjusted this assessment, and they had to kind of figure out like the best sort of method for getting up off the floor. And then I built a routine that was designed to help them improve in this thing. You know, I threw a lot of like, for those of you who have seen this exercise, it's called a Turkish get up. And it's an exercise with a kettlebell, or you can use a dumbbell, where your client actually starts on the floor. We kind of got this picture's kind of in reverse, but you start in on the floor, and then you get yourself up. Actually, you know what? I need more pictures. I got to get them all the way from the floor. There we go. So you start on the floor with a kettlebell, and then you put your arm up, and then you roll to one side, get up to your elbow. From your elbow, you get up to your hand. From there, you kick your straight leg back through the body and end up in this position here, into a slight lunge, into a standing position. So the Turkish get up, super great exercise, by the way, terrific for core strength, terrific for stabilization in the shoulder and really everything. And so it kind of looks like this. Yeah, I knew it. It was a CrossFit will have a video on this. They're obsessed with this exercise. This is a dumbbell version, but it's still really, really good. So kind of a fun exercise here. Up and then hand, knee, lunge, stand. And there it is. And so we threw this into a routine, right? And then you want to be able to do it in reverse as well. So this was my routine for John and Jackie, and they were super into it. They you know, they totally improved, and we used it as a performance assessment. Is it in a book? No. Did I read about it anywhere? No, we kind of made up our own performance assessment. So performance assessments really can just kind of be anything where you are tracking your beginning numbers to your ending numbers. That's just very key that you make sure that you are always being as consistent as possible. That's why we have some rules written down for these assessments. Consistency is going to be key there. That's why this says, place the tape 36 inches apart and go for 15 seconds and do it in a push-up position. And they're actually a little bit ambiguous here. It doesn't say like, during that push-up position for the Davies test, are your client's feet shoulder width apart, hip width apart, are their feet together? In the picture here, you can see the feet are together, which is how I instruct my clients to do it. Because then again, I'm being very consistent. They might have improvement one day because their feet are wider and it gives them a more solid base of support. So then the exercise is easier. So if they did really well, 1 week, and then next week they come back next month they come back and their feet are together, suddenly their balance is, it's harder. And so then they like do worse. I don't want to have my client backtrack. So I always want to make sure that we're being, as consistent as possible here. But let's go ahead and show you what the Davies test looks like. So you guys can get a chance to take a look at it. This one that I like. And I'm sure all of these are fine. Let's watch the first one. I try to show the same videos that I show in all my classes, but like, I don't have any of these darn videos saved.
The Davies test is used to measure an athlete's upper extremity agility and stabilization. What we're going to do is take 2 pieces of tape and place them 36 inches apart on the floor. From here, assume the push-up position with each hand on a piece of tape. You'll then transfer one hand to the other, tapping the hand and then returning back to the starting position. You'll alternate hands quickly, trying to touch each side as quickly as possible for 15 seconds. We'll perform this test 3 times to get an accurate measurement. This is how it's done.
And we're just going to wait 15 seconds. He's going to get as many touches as he can. He's going to count them and look for improvements between.
This is the Davies test.
Look for improvements between rounds and, look for improvements between weeks. So upper extremity agility. So our key pieces of information that we want to pay attention to, guys. It is an upper extremity agility assessment. That's what it is, right? Or you can think of it as an upper extremity agility and stabilization assessment. The tape, it's 2 pieces of tape, 36 inches apart. It's a push-up position, and you are going to move for 15 seconds, as many taps as you can. And you're going to take 60 seconds rest in between each set, and you're going to do 3 trials. So there's some key pieces of information there, right? You might get a multiple choice question that says, how much rest should you give your client between rounds of the Davies test, and it's going to be 60 seconds. Kind of like your kind of classic working out rest period. How many trials should you perform in the Davies test? And it'll be 3 trials. There's a couple different sort of key pieces of information here. Now, in the real world, here's the thing. I don't want to single anybody out here, but for those of you who might be a bit more of an efficient use of space and you're built a little bit lower to the ground than some of us, 36 inches apart is a pretty big wingspan for some people. So could you adjust that to 30 inches? Could you adjust it to 28 inches or 24 inches or whatever? Of course you can. If you've got a client who finds that just 36 inches apart is a really wide distance for them, you can always adjust. Just make sure you write it down. You do not want to come into a situation where you did 28 inches the first time you ever assessed your client and then 30 inches the next time, and suddenly the exercise is way, way harder and they're wondering why, their shoulder stability got worse after they started working with you, right? So that is the Davies test. like I said, it's not a ton of information. It's honestly pretty simple to understand, pretty basic to absorb, but it is very fun to perform. I actually really love doing the Davies test. If I've got a client who's capable of it, I often will ask them if they want to, do it for fun. Definitely not required, but definitely a good time. Any questions on how to perform any of this, or any comments or concerns? Checking in with all y'all. All righty. You guys with me? Real quiet today. All right, so let's take a look at the Sharks skill test next, guys. So the Sharks skill test is also a performance assessment. This is a lower extremity assessment, right? So rather than the upper body Davies test, which is testing your upper extremity agility, this is going to test your lower extremity agility. This involves a little bit of balance, right? So this should be perceived as like a progression from your single leg squat. So if your client can't do the single leg squat, they shouldn't be doing this assessment. If you found that like you were trying to squat down on that single leg and they literally couldn't maintain their balance at all, this assessment really just isn't suitable for that type of client. So we are going to avoid that. And so what you're going to do is you're going to position your client in the center of a 3x3 grid. So that's 9 boxes. They're going to keep their hands on their hips. They're going to stand on one leg, and they're going to jump from box to box to box while always returning to the center box. Okay. So you're going to instruct them to go in a designated pattern. The way I usually do it is I instruct my client to do the front, and then I instruct them to go towards the outside of whatever leg they are leading with. So if it's their right leg, they're going to start in the center and then go to the right. If it's their left leg, they're going to start in the center and go to the left. That's how I've always instructed it. You can do whatever pattern you want to do. Just make sure it is always consistent. Once you pick a pattern, keep it for the rest of your freaking career. Don't change it. You don't want to have to remember like what pattern you had Sally do compared to like Bob. You know what I mean? That's definitely not going to be a very consistent way for you to do things. It's going to be a lot of mental energy that you don't need to expend. Just pick a pattern and keep it. You don't even have to do what I do. Like you can just go always be like, we're going to go clockwise every time. Great. Do it that way. But they are going to jump from box to 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 box consistently, right? With their hands remaining on their hips. You are going to test how long it takes them to perform the entire assessment. So how long does it take them to go from box to box to box, right? So that means that they're going to be returning to the center every single time. You are going to give them penalties if any of these things happen. You're going to penalize them if they jump into the wrong box, because maybe they lost their balance for a second and they had to just jump to kind of help, regain their balance. So they land in the wrong box. That's a 0.1 second penalty. If their hands come off their hips at any time while they're trying to balance, that is a 0.1 second penalty. Or if their foot, opposite foot that is not that they are not balancing on, if they have to touch that foot to the ground, that is also a 0.1 second penalty. So you are measuring how long it takes them to go through this assessment. Maybe it takes them 12 seconds to do it the first time, and then 4 weeks later it only took them like 11 seconds, right? That's a 1 second improvement. That's pretty good. You're going to have them perform one practice round with each leg, and then you are going to do twice with each foot after that, a total of 4 times. Doesn't have any specific rest periods here, but oftentimes I'll have them do their left, then I'll have them do their right. Those are the practiced rounds. I'll give them 60 seconds of rest. I'll have them do their left, then their right. That'll be their first timed round for each side. I'll give them another 60 seconds and then have them do their left and have them do their right again. and that's their final round. So again, position your client in the center box of a grid with hands on hips, standing on one leg. Instruct them to hop in a designated pattern, always returning to the center box. Perform 1 practice round with each foot, and then perform twice with each foot. That's going to be 4 total times. And you are keeping track of the time. So if they land in the wrong box, if their hands come off their hips, or if they touch the ground, you're going to add 0.1 second penalty. So you don't have to pay attention to much here. You're just going to keep an eye on them and make sure that like they're going in the right pattern and that their hands don't come up off the floor. So if we look at the Sharks skill test here, this guy moves pretty quick here. Oh, interesting. This guy moves pretty quick, but these boxes are way too big. Your boxes like this, I don't know how large this grid is, but each box should only be 12 inches by 12 inches. It should be a 1 foot by 1 foot square, which means the normal box is only 3 feet wide. This guy's boxes are huge.
Agility and neuromuscular control of the lower extremity, and is a progression from the single leg squat test. The setup of the test requires 9 12 by 12 inch boxes placed in a 3 by 3 pattern. The starting point of the test is in the center square. The athlete stands hands on hips and on one leg. The test is performed by hopping into each box in a designated pattern, always returning to the center square before moving on to the next in the sequence. Prior to the test, the athlete should perform 2 practice runs, 1 with each foot in the designated pattern to ensure they understand the test going forward.
Now, you can see right here, he actually, in this jump, he kind of lands like on the line a little bit. That's fine. Like, don't penalize your client for that. It's like, you know, if they land like more in one box than the other, then that's like landing in the wrong box. But like, you know, I mean, I'll leave it up to you guys, your own discretion to be as picky as you want to be with your clients, but I wouldn't penalize my client for like barely touching the freaking line, you know, while they're trying to do this assessment.
Once the athlete is set, perform a time test as quick as possible.
See that one there though, he landed twice in one box.
Into the first box and ends when the athlete lands in the center square after completion of the designated pattern. Time testing is performed twice on each foot, alternating after each test.
So I'd give this guy like on that second round, I'd give him a 0.1
during
second.
the test, the non-hopping leg touches the ground, the hands come off the hips, the hopping foot goes into the wrong square, or does not return to the center square, a 1/10 of a second penalty is added to their time. The pros of the test include it being quick and easy to set up and to perform with minimal equipment required. The results give a good basis on the athlete's agility and neuromuscular control of the lower extremity. The cons of the test include the test not...
Kind of fun, right? So I will say this will not always be super practical in most gyms that you work at. If you don't have like tile, like a tiled place at your gym, you know, you're going to have to get permission from your boss to freaking tape up the floor, which probably isn't going to happen. You can set this up with cones. I've done that before. But honestly, it takes up a lot of space, the cones. So then like your client has a hard time like being able to hop over them, which, you know, kind of skews the test a lot. But you can always buy, like, if you're really into this stuff, Sharks skill test mat. There are mats out there that you can actually purchase, you know, that have like the little grid on them. And then you can just keep that at your gym or whatever. Yeah, we're getting just like a bunch of pictures of like sharks now. But again, like, you know, if your work has like tile floors, you know, most tiles are 1 foot by 1 foot, so they're kind of perfect for it. So that is actually how to perform your, you know, Davies test and your Shark skill test, right? So all right, so let's say I've got a client You know, and we're going to assume this client is like fairly athletic, right? They come to me and they, you know, we sit down for our sort of pre-assessment, right? We set up, we do our PAR-Q, we do the general medical history questionnaire. And then while I'm there, I'm interviewing my client, you know, I'm talking to them and I'm like, you know, what are you here for? What are you interested in? What is the purpose, you know, like, what do you seek out when you think personal training, right? And they're like, well, you know, I want to drop a couple pounds. I want to look better. I want to feel better. Maybe put on some lean muscle mass. You know, overall, I just want to like improve my athleticism. And it's like, okay, great. Like those are some pretty solid goals. So, you know, already right there, I've got a pretty good idea that like this person is, you know, they're going to be motivated by tracking their progress, right? And this is a good classic conversation you're going to have with like a lot of people, right? So then, you know, if we're going through our entire assessment process, let me open up an assessment sheet here actually, and we can kind of visually follow along. Where the heck do I keep that thing? It's in here, right? Yep, client forms. So then it's like, all right, let's go ahead and take, you know, go through our whole assessment process, right? Everything we've been kind of talking about until now. So, you know, I'm going to put my client's age, their weight, their height, you know, and then before I get them up, now that I've talked to them a little bit about their goals, before I get them onto their feet, I'm going to get their resting heart rate because they've been sitting for a little while, right? They filled out their PAR-Q, they filled out their general medical history questionnaire. That took some time. So now I'm going to gather their heart rate information, right? I'm going to get their resting heart rate. And then I'm going to sit down and be like, all right, I'll probably, if I'm being honest, punch it into a calculator so I don't have to do math. And say, all right, so here's your max heart rate, right? You said you were 39 years old, so 220 minus 39. That gives us a max heart rate of 181, so I'll fill that out, right? And then I will sort of calculate their carbonate methods as well. So, you know, their max heart rate minus their resting heart rate times their intensity. Now I got my clients like broken into different zones, and I'll explain the importance of this. I'll say like, so what we're going to use zone 1 for is like your steady state cardio. We're going to use zone 2 when we're trying to amp that steady state up and do a little bit of medium interval training. And then if we're doing HIIT training, like that high intensity interval stuff, that's where we're getting into zone 3. So we'll use zone 3 to work, and we'll use zone 1 to recover, rather than, you know, sprinting and walking, which might be, you know, a little bit too gentle. So they're like, great, that sounds awesome. Now I've got some specific, you know, it's kind of targets to hit. I'll optionally do their blood pressure, and then it'll be like, all right, so now let's take you over and start getting, you know, into your body fat percentage and circumference measurements, right? So I'll do their BMI score, you know, to calculate, which, you know, I already gathered their weight from earlier. So I'll run the numbers on their BMI. I'll do their body fat percentage. If I'm doing the skin fold measurement version, you know, I will use the caliper on their biceps, triceps, subscapular, iliac crest. And then that will tell me their overall body fat percentage, right? I'll do their circumference measurements at the neck, chest, waist, hips, thigh, calf, biceps, and forearm, which, you know, be very optional. Honestly, these are all very optional. The ones I do are chest, waist, and hips, honestly. I actually don't do most of the circumference measurements. And then it's time to take them into like the workout portion. So now it's like, all right, we kind of got all the really gentle stuff, but now let's sort of make this feel a little bit tougher, you know? Like, remember, this is their free session a lot of times, right? So because of that, I want to make a really good first impression, so that if I, you know, talk to this person, I'm like, hey, are you interested in, you know, signing up for training? I want to make sure that this person's like, yeah, you're the best trainer ever. Of course I want to work with you, right? So this, you know, assessment process, I'm going to explain it in detail as to like what all the information that I'm gathering for my client means. But I'm also going to be, you know, kind of explaining like how I'm going to use the information to write them a very specific routine. So now we've sort of pivoted, right? Like we started off by taking some very superficial assessment information, but now I'm into the overhead squat. right? And now it's like, all right, well, let's take a look and see how you move. And if I notice that their feet turn out, I'm going to say, hey, so your feet turn out when you squat a little bit, right? And that's causing your knees to cave in and adduct a little bit. So what that means, since we're seeing these two things here, is that there's a little bit of tightness in the inner thigh and a little bit of tightness in the outer calf. Which means those are the types of stretches that we want to focus on. You know, a lot of times people come into the gym, they don't know what warm-up stretches they're supposed to do, you know, and so generally people end up doing a lot of their, you know, stretches that they're familiar with or stretches that they like the most, you know. I used to, and I, you know, a lot of times I'll actually use this example with my clients. But when I was in PE class, you know, it was the same every year. Our teacher would teach us 5 or 6 stretches. And, you know, if class started at 9, you know, 30 or whatever, we would warm up from 9:30 to 9:35, you know, and then your job was to go to your spot, stand there and take yourself through the stretches that our gym teacher would teach us in the beginning of the year, you know? So me, and probably most kids, I would just do my favorite stretches over and over again. You know, like the ones that I found uncomfortable, like my hamstrings, I was like, nah, I don't like that one because it's uncomfortable. So I would just do this shoulder stretch, which this stretch sucks, by the way. Like, it does nothing. You know, I would do my triceps because that one felt good. I would do my quads because I was already really mobile in my quads. So it's the one I liked, you know? And then I would feel warmed up because I did my stretches and I would, you know, start doing gym class. Doesn't exactly sound like a very effective method for making someone more athletic, right? So instead, what I should have been doing is I should have been doing the types of stretches that were most effective at sort of filling in my gaps, you know, the things that I needed to stretch. Well, you know, no one ever did an overhead squat assessment with me in, you know, gym class. But what we saw today is we saw the feet turn out, we saw the knees cave in a little bit. That tells me we need to do some adductor stretches. We need to do some calf stretches, right? We need to do a stretch for your TFL, which is actually a hip flexor muscle. And if we can loosen all that up, your squat's going to improve. You're going to feel better. You're going to move better. And we're really going to be, you know, reducing our risk for injury when it comes to exercising. So that's a lot of times like how I will explain the overhead squat. And I'll take my client through it. Now, here's the other part of assessing clients. And this is sort of, we are pivoting the conversation. I'm kind of going to allude to what we're going to be talking about next week when we start into our, good Lord, come on, brain, sales class. So when we're going into PFT 100, which is leadership, business, and sales, you know, we are going to use this assessment process to kind of key up a sales conversation with our client and say, like, you know, do you want to sign up for training? You know, well, you better make a good first impression. You better build rapport with your client. You better make sure that there's some value built into your sessions, and they need to say, like, all right, this all sounds really good. I want to work with this person, right? So in your textbook, your overhead squat, you really only need to do maybe 3 to 5 reps to figure it out. Me personally, what I will often do with someone is I will actually do 3 sets of about 10 to 15 repetitions, depending on the client. Now that's not in your books, but I love to do that because now they're going to get some body weight squats in. They're going to get a little bit of leg work, and they're going to feel like, all right, I'm putting some work in today. You know, like I'm actually, you know, this assessment process is almost a little bit of a workout. And the overhead squat is more challenging than like a regular squat. You know, they're doing it with their shoes on. There's a lot of things that are kind of working here. If my client can't really handle that many repetitions, I don't need to do this, right? If they're not really the most athletic person to start, that's okay. You know, I can be pretty gentle now. I can always modify. But I will often sort of do it under the guise of being like, all right, I'm going to look from an anterior view and a lateral view and a posterior view, and I'll have them do all 15. So they end up doing 3 sets of 15 squats. Legs are going to be burning a little bit, you know? And now they're like, wow, this is already like a little bit tough. I'm really getting my money's worth in this sort of free first session, you know? Then I'll take my client through the single leg squat. Same concept, right? I'll have them do a couple different sets here, and I'm looking to see, does that knee cave in? And so I'll explain the purpose of the assessment and be like, hey, this is a lower extremity postural assessment where I'm going to assess not only your posture, but now we're also going to take a look to see how's your core strength, how's your balance, right? So I'll take them through that process. And now their legs are really burning, right? Then I take them over to the cable machine. I make them do a pushing and a pulling assessment. And so now they're starting to get a little bit of an upper body work. And so I'll do maybe 2 to 3 sets of, between 15 and 20 repetitions on that. Like it says in your book, I'm not changing the purpose of the assessment. And I'm looking to see any of those postural distortions, right? If my client starts distorting, I'm going to say, hey, I saw your pelvis kind of drop. You tend to arch your back when you're doing your chest press. That indicates that like your low back is having trouble stabilizing. So instead it's contracting rather than just holding your spine in place. We're going to give you some lower back stretches as well in your routine. So now I've learned a little bit about my client. I need to do some adductor stretches, some TFL stretches, some calf stretches, and some erector spinae stretches. And so now we're starting to kind of get our warm-up all pieced together for our client. Then it's time to take them through those cardio assessments. So we take them through the YMCA step test, right? We set up a 12-inch box. We set up a metronome at 96 beats per minute. And I'm going to say, all right, so you're going to step up, left, right, up, down, down. And we're going to go for 3 minutes. And then what you're going to do is you're going to turn around, take a seat on that step, and I'm going to test your pulse for that 3 minutes and see how it goes. The faster your pulse sort of recovers back to normal, the better in shape your cardiovascular system is. So this is great because now we can track to see, how well you're kind of recovering as we sort of like continue over the next few weeks. So I'll have them do that, or I will have them do the Rockport walk test. This is up to you guys. You can either do one or the other. You could do both if you want. Although I don't really recommend doing both. They both serve the same purpose. But based on how well your client performs, you're going to say, hey, based on the chart, you're either going to get zone 1 or you're going to get zone 2. You're going to get zone 3 for your workout, whichever one they qualify for. And then I'll end it by taking them over and doing our performance assessments. We'll take a look at the Davies test. Round 1, how many touches did they get? Round 2, round 3, right? So now you think about like all the upper body work they've done. They did 3 sets of a pushing assessment. They did 3 sets of a pulling assessment. And now they did the Davies test. Their upper body's going to be feeling it. That's not bad. You think about like upper body sets there. It's about 9 sets of exercise. And then we got the shark skill test, which is like jumping around on one leg, right? They got a little bit of cardio in with our cardio assessments. They got the overhead squat for 3 sets. They got the single leg squat for, maybe 3 sets. They did the step test, which is a lot of step up to balance. Legs are burning like crazy. And now they've done 2 jumping balance exercises. So by the end of that whole process, which, we're getting through this whole process in about an hour, chances are my client is feeling the burn. They've probably worked up a little bit of a sweat. They've burned some calories and they're like, man, this was a tough workout, and then you get to say my favorite thing ever, which is like, this isn't the workout. This is just the assessment process, right? And then they're like, oh my God, if that's just the assessment process, how tough is the work? I gotta work with this person, if this person kicks my butt before we start working out, imagine what they're going to do once we actually hit the real gym floor. So that's kind of, I like to talk about that on the performance assessment day because, these are very, very optional. You don't have to do these, but they're a great way to kind of look for improvements. Now, Lorianne and Thomas, you guys haven't heard of this, but some of you guys will remember from last module, we talked about the tug test, right? Which is a much gentler performance assessment, but it is still a performance assessment. And what you're going to do is, okay, this is very cartoony, but whatever. You're going to instruct your client, who will be sitting in a chair, to stand up, and then 3 meters away, you're just going to have a single cone. And they're going to walk around that cone, walk back, and sit down. And you're going to have a stopwatch. You're going to test to see how long it takes them to stand up out of that chair and then sit back down in that chair after they've walked around that cone. Now, is this the hardest assessment in the world? Definitely not. But if I've got a client who is maybe a senior, maybe they are a fall risk, maybe they tell me they have osteoporosis or, poor balance, right? This is the perfect assessment for that client, because now it's something that I can do that can, test to see how well they are improving as they start working with me, and we start working on their balance. We start improving things, and doing all this corrective exercise stuff. Every time I assess them, if they get a little bit faster and they go through that cone a little bit quicker, that's showing improvement, and that's going to keep them motivated. Maybe their weight loss has stalled. Maybe they're trying to drop 20 pounds for a wedding, and they were losing weight consistently, and then all of a sudden, maybe they hit a little bit of a plateau, but their circumference measurements get a little bit better. Their step test improves, their tug test or Davies test or shark skill test, any of those things get just like a little bit better. It's going to keep your client motivated, and it's going to keep them on track, so they're more likely to continue with the program. They're not going to get, they're going to have one bad piece of data. I mean, it's a bummer, right? But they are going to see overall improvements over time globally, and that's what's most important. Any questions or comments, guys? How are we feeling? Checking in with all y'all.
All great.
Good.
I'm great.
Yeah, kind of fun. We'll get to do these, by the way, on Thursday when we meet up. We're gonna get a chance to kind of, we're gonna do the 3-minute step test I want to get through, and then we can do some shark skill stuff and some Davies stuff, which will be really fun because it's always kind of fun to see like Sochi students kind of compete against each other and see who can go the fastest. I have seen some crazy Davies tests in my day. Now, I do want to mention one last thing before we dive into our posture conversation for the day. This is the quote unquote sports mod. Right. So our program design class that we're going to get into in a couple of weeks is going to cover how to train athletes. Right. Athletes are not hiring you to lose weight. They're not hiring you to even, improve their health, although those things are both going to happen. They're hiring you to be a better athlete. They're looking to improve performance. Right. So we're going to see a much larger list of performance assessments when we get to the sports book. If you dive in there, you are going to see a whole much larger list. You can do the left test or the left drill, which is, I'm just going to pull up a picture of it, or I will pull up a bunch of pictures of drill bits. Interesting. Agility. There we go. Freaking A. Although actually I'm not seeing the one I need. All right, whatever. Oh, nope, still not the one I need. So you can do the left drill, which is where you'll set 2 cones 10 yards apart, and they will, 20 yards apart. And they will sprint from the first cone to touch the second cone. They will backpedal, so they'll back shuffle to touch the first cone again. Then they're going to turn to the side. They're going to side shuffle. They're going to side shuffle. They're going to karaoke, and then they're going to turn one final time, and they're going to sprint through that final cone once more. So sprint, backpedal, side shuffle, karaoke, sprint, and you're going to time it. That is a very tough, very fun agility drill, okay? There's also other ones out there. There's the 5-10-5 drill. They start in the middle. For those, I don't know if anybody in here played football and did this drill. I don't know if you guys actually are familiar with this, but you start in the center, sprint, and there's 3 cones, 2 that are 10 yards apart with 1 in the center. So they're 5 yards apart each. They sprint to this cone here. They sprint all the way back down, and then they sprint through the center here, and you're going to end the time as soon as they get to that middle cone. So they sprint, turn, turn. And when you watch someone do it, it's really intense.
Yeah, I did that in off-season training for high school football.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is it is a terrific drill. I just want to see you doing it, buddy. Oh, I hate it when people make videos like this. I absolutely passionately hate videos like that where they just like show like clips of half of the thing rather than them doing the whole thing. There we go. That's the 5-10-5 drill. The pro agility drill is what it's called. So they start in the center, sprint, and then your time ends when you cross the midline. You notice he runs all the way through. You're not timing it down here, you're timing it in the center, but it doesn't make any sense to try to aim for the center. You want to power through, you know? So that's the pro agility drill. That's a really fun one. There's the T drill. There are a million cone drills that can be performed as performance assessments. So anyway, we're going to see some of those in the coming weeks. It'll be kind of fun. We'll get to do some of them actually. You know, we'll take a trip out to the park and stuff and do those, which will be a really good time. Yeah, that is our performance assessments. Like I said, it's really simple, right? The stuff you got to attach on to, right? Shark skill test, lower extremity agility assessment, Davies test, upper extremity agility assessment, you know? So let's take a look here. I want to kind of, you know, we've been talking a lot about upper body stuff today. I want to kind of continue that trend, and let's take a look at what happens if our client has upper body dysfunction. Yeah, right. No kidding, buddy. So let's take a look here. We're going to look at two example clients here. The first client is a client who has a forward head posture and elevated shoulders, right? So going back to our list from yesterday, right? What muscles cause the shoulder elevation? We know that's going to be the upper trapezius, right? That muscle, you know, in the top of the neck that's literally pulling your scapula upwards, right? We know that our overactive muscles here are going to be our levator scapulae, right? So that's going to be those muscles on the side of the neck as well that are also elevating the scapula. We know it's going to be our scalenes, which are muscles that live on the side of the neck that you know, elevate the collarbone and the rib. Not so much your scapula, but they elevate like the ribs there. And then we're going to see the sternocleidomastoid. That's going to be overactive, elevating our collarbone, which your collarbone is attached to your scapula. So what does it do? It elevates the freaking scapula. So now we definitely understand why our client has elevated shoulders. And then that sternocleidomastoid on the front also likes to pull the head forward, right? Along with the scalene. So that explains our forward head posture. So we see tightness in the back of the neck here, the side of the neck, the front of the neck. All of those things are altering how well your shoulder joint is going to move. And then I threw in a little bit of a ball lat stretch on here. That's kind of a curve ball, actually. That doesn't necessarily always belong with elevated shoulders, but generally you will find that when your lat is really tight, it just causes a lot of upper body dysfunction. It doesn't necessarily have to be on here. We can actually kind of take that out because it's not 100% of the list. But I also found that this warm up was just a little sparse because this is, you know, we're looking at a client who has like a problem in isolation, which will never be the case. You know, your clients will never have just like one little tiny problem. They'll have like lots of problems, right? But in this case, they're just having, you know, they're like, I have perfect lower body posture and just, you know, a tight neck. And it's like, you know, we would have a combination here when we were writing our warm up. We'd look at, you know, stretches for the legs, and then we move up to the neck. But what we're going to do, we can't really foam roll the neck stuff, right? But what we can do is we can do a little bit of SMR. We can do a little bit of foam rolling on our thoracic spine. So when we look at like SMRing your thoracic spine, it'll look kind of like this. So we're going to place a foam roller just behind the upper back. And this honestly is the one that everybody likes. This is the one that's like kind of pleasant. You know, sometimes foam rolling, you're just like, oh God, that's tight. I hate it. You know, but this is the one that everyone's like, this is a shoulder rub, you know, like this is like a freaking massage. And you're just going to kind of roll, you know, in the upper back there. And what that does is it gets a chance to kind of just barely get into the sort of origin for those upper trapezius muscles, right? So by rolling into this, remember we look at our trapezius muscles, right? It's this kind of, it's the kind of triangular, right? Well, you're rolling in this kind of area here. So you're kind of getting this lower portion of the upper trapezius. It's about as good as it gets. Now, you could use a lacrosse ball and maybe place it back there and really get into those upper traps. You know, I'll actually place a lacrosse ball sort of on the wall sometimes and kind of dig in if my shoulders are getting really tight. You can sort of do that. It'll look like this. Yeah, there's the thoracic spine. But you'll sometimes see people use just like a little lacrosse ball or a tennis ball. Oop, hold on a second. Get Lorianne back in here. We lost her. Hey, Lorianne, we lost you for a second. So we can place the lacrosse ball up on the upper trapezius there. Or we could just use the foam roller. Or if you've got a TheraCane, this is great because it's got the little hook, right? Buy one of these guys. Like really, they are just a great tool to have. It's mostly for you. You can give it to your clients and teach your clients how to use it too, but like this is a good purchase, guys. Like $16, you know? And you got, you know, a little massage you can give yourself. So you can reach around to your low back, you can go up into your shoulders, you know, it's awesome. Now, if I don't have my TheraCane and I'm at the gym, one of the ways that I will often do my upper trapezius, I will do a little bit of a sneaky thing. I will actually go to the Smith machine. That's this machine here that has the sort of on like a track barbell, you know? And what I'll do is I don't have any weight on it. I'll just pull it up and then attach it to the hooks there, and I'll run under the bar, and I'll just kind of stand up and dig that bar into my upper traps. It can be a really good release. So if I'm like down and dirty, I don't have my TheraCane with me, I don't have my lacrosse ball with me, and I don't feel like giving myself a little bit of like manual massage, I will totally just like, you know, I'm like a cat rubbing on a Smith machine, just like get up in there and kind of roll that out. So don't be afraid to do that. It actually is kind of a nice massage there. So we're going to SMR the thoracic spine and the upper trapezius, and that's going to kind of loosen up the area. You can see here I put in the coaching tips. For the upper trapezius, use a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball, depending on the level of pressure that is appropriate for your client. Then we are going to do a static levator scapulae stretch. How do you do that? Well, remember your levator scapula is in the back of your neck, right? It's right here. You know, those upper neck muscles. Here's your rhomboids. But over here, that's your levator scap, right? It attaches to the top of your scapula into the neck there. So, you know, this muscle does ipsilateral rotation, meaning that like it turns you to the same side. So my right turns my head to my right, my left turns my head to the left, right? And it also elevates my shoulders. So how am I going to stretch it? Well, I'm going to depress my shoulders. I'm going to reach actively down towards the floor. You know, basically I'm going to take my hand, I'm going to reach down to the floor like this. I'm going to keep my shoulders retracted, and I'm going to press downwards, right? And then I'm just going to look to the opposite side. If your client's really tight, this will be enough stretch for them. Usually it's not though. So the other way that we do it is we make it a little bit tougher by looking to the side, taking our head down, reaching up and giving that just a little bit of a gentle pull, and then just reaching with that opposite arm down towards the floor, right? So I tell my clients, smell your pits. It honestly works really well. You're just going to go right here into that armpit. And that's going to stretch out the back of the neck and the levator scapula, right? So that's our first one. We'll do 30 seconds there with a static levator scapulae stretch. Then we've got a static upper trapezius stretch, which that is upper trapezius / scalenes, by the way. But NASM doesn't list it that way, so I didn't list it that way. Upper traps are on the side of the neck, right? So they're in charge. Your levator scapula did this, right? Your upper traps do this. It moves your head side to side like that, right? So what we're going to do to stretch it, my right side contracts this way, right? So if I want to stretch my right side, I'm going to tilt my head to the left, and I'm going to cup my arm up and over my ear, kind of like this. And now I can feel a nice deep stretch right in the neck there. And again, I'm going to keep my palm sort of this way so that I can retract my shoulders, and I'm going to depress my shoulder down. So by reaching, I'm stretching out those upper trapezius muscles. So now I've got the back, I've got the side. Now I got to get the front. That's our sternocleidomastoid, right? Those really tight muscles right here. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do the sternocleidomastoid, right? It's that tight muscle in the front of the neck there. Now, this is also going to do rotation. So if I want to stretch my right, I've got to look to my left. I've got to depress this down. And then this muscle is in charge of, kind of the Quagmire, like forward head bob thing that he does. So we need to look backwards, basically. So the way that I like to do this one is I like to depress my collarbone with my arm, look over to the side, and drop my head back. Oh, and here's one other thing that never gets mentioned in the exercise side of things. This is your sterno, it's attached to your sternum, cleido, it's attached to your clavicle, mastoid. It runs up and just underneath your masseter. Your masseter, you do not need to know this muscle. Definitely not a personal training muscle. But your masseter is in charge of chewing. So keep your mouth closed while you do this exercise. Just close your jaw, and that will give you a slightly deeper stretch. Because this muscle kind of helps you open your jaw almost. Well, it doesn't actually, but it's attached to a muscle that does. So when you turn your head to the side, a lot of times you'll see people open up their mouth because they're trying to reduce the stretch. So close that mouth. Okay. I never see that tip. Nobody ever brings it up, and it drives me crazy. So that is our sternocleidomastoid stretch. There's other versions out there, like NASM prefers, where is it? Yeah, they like this version here. And I have nothing against this version of the stretch. What you do is you do the exact same thing. So you can see here, she is going to turn to the side. She's got her head slightly forward, and then she looks up, right? So that upward action is what stretches out that's SCM muscle. And then she's got her arm down like this. That is drawing everything away. I do like this version. My problem with it, though, is that you are putting your shoulder into internal rotation, which we have so many people who have way too much internal rotation. So I'm not a huge fan of that version personally. But that's definitely another option. If your client gets a better stretch with this version, do it, There's a lot of stretches out there that are not like my favorite versions that when I'm training somebody, they'll say, I feel this a little bit more when I do this way. And I'll be like, great, then that's the version we're going to do, There's definitely nothing wrong with that. So there we go. So now we've got our warm up, right? If our client has this bad forward head and bad elevated shoulders, we're going to foam roll. We're going to do a little bit of foam rolling in the upper body, and then we're going to stretch out those 3 things. Now it's time to get into our workout. We've got our overactive muscles turned off. So let's heat their body up a little bit so that all their muscles are nice and pliable. So we're going to throw them on, we said the rowing machine this week for 5 minutes, 40 to 60% of their max heart rate, nothing intense, right? And now we get into our movement preparation. We get into our core balance reactive exercises, right? We want to turn the core on before we start doing any intense exercise. We want to turn their balance on before we start doing any intense exercise. And we want to do some plyometrics, some reactives that'll kind of wake the body up and really get everything nice and active. So let's turn the stuff that's groggy, let's turn those underactive muscles on, right? So here's the thing though, right? What are our underactive muscles with a forward head posture, shoulder elevation, right? Well, our underactive muscles are going to be our lower trapezius, which is exactly the opposite of your upper trapezius, right? If the upper pulls your shoulders up, the lower pulls your shoulders down. It's also going to be your middle trapezius, which are in charge of like scapular retraction. It's going to be your rhomboids, which are living underneath your trap muscles that are responsible for pulling your shoulder blades back as well. So scapular retraction, scapular depression, right? And then we're also going to see those deep cervical flexors, right? Those muscles on the front of the neck that are responsible for tucking your chin back, right? So these muscles here on the front of the neck that are supposed to stabilize can't, right? Because your sternocleidomastoid keeps doing too much freaking work. Here's the thing, like there's not that many exercises in your book, and I tried to pick exercises that are only in your book, that are really going to focus on tucking the chin back and, retracting the shoulders. But we got a couple options here. One is going to be marching. Now, marching is a core exercise. Okay, yeah, I should have seen that coming. Not that version. Marching core exercise. In fact, marching core exercise NASM. I guess they don't have a video on this one. So, well, somebody does. So here's marching, right? What she's going to do is she's going to contract her abdomen and she's going to march up like this. Now, this is a core stabilization exercise. She is learning how to activate her transverse abdominis. She's not moving her spine. She's just creating core stability. And then she's moving things around her spine. She can make this more challenging by doing this version here. You can see there's a little bit of a Pilates exercise. Now she's got resistance that wants to pull her arms up this way. So she's going to contract her core to keep her spine in place and stabilize like that. And she's moving her lower body here. So she's learning how to not crunch her spine. She's learning how to hold her spine in place, which is great. These are great exercises. Now, what the heck does this have to do with our client who has elevated shoulders? Well, remember, we were just trying to get a core exercise because that's what we put in our movement prep, right? We put, activation techniques for our core. So this would be a great way to activate the core, but what does it have to do with our neck? Well, marching is a supine position. She's laying with her head facing straight up towards the ceiling. So because of that, she's got a really good opportunity here to tuck her chin and activate those deep cervical flexors. I will be honest, in this example, she's not doing that so much. But if we look at like chin tuck, supine, if you are laying on your back, you can do just a little bit. I know it's a double chin. I know it's not everybody's favorite thing to see. But this little bit, if you can get your head into this position here, where you're tucking your chin, and then you hold this while you do your marching, that's an opportunity. So we put that in our coaching tips, right? You can see over here in our coaching tip. Keep the chin tucked to activate those deep cervical flexors. I'll be honest, guys. I probably wouldn't say that if it were just my client. I wouldn't say like activate your deep cervical flexors because they're going to be like, you know. But I would say keep the chin tucked during the movement. I put that in there so that you guys can see it. Does that make sense, everybody? You see what we're going with here?
Yep.
Cool. Lorianne, how you feeling? I know yesterday the movement prep section seemed a little daunting.
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm just having some confusion with the antagonist agonist, like with shoulder raise and what's the antagonist, stuff like that.
Yeah, so it's tough, right? Because sometimes it's like sometimes it's not always like an antagonist. Sometimes it's a synergist, right? And that's where it gets confusing. Like it's always easy to be like, all right, if my biceps are tight, my triceps are weak. You know what I mean? Like you just jump straight to the other side of the bone. With your traps, it's a little bit different, right? Because they're not lined up the same. So when we look at what's causing like scapular elevation, you know, raising our shoulders up like this. I was hoping to see like a list of muscles. That's okay. You know, we look at like scapular elevation, we are going to see the upper trapezius and levator scapulae. Those are the two main primary muscles. So these are our tight agonists, right? Oh, come on. That's a great picture. Oh, it's low quality. Okay, there we go. Zooming in here. So you can see there's the levator, right? Grabbing my scapula. And there's my upper trapezius, grabbing my scapula. Both those are going to pull my scapula up like this. So we need to strengthen the muscles that pull it down. Well, you can see those muscles right here. You've got your rhomboids. You've got your lower trapezius that grabs the same ridge that your upper traps grab, but instead it's pulling downwards. So your lower traps, they're going to pull this way, right? Which is actually what we're getting into next, right? So if we're looking at our next muscle, or our next exercise rather, we are looking at what's called the floor prone cobra. And the floor prone cobra looks like this. It's a core exercise because she's stabilizing her spine, but she's pulling her shoulder blades back and down. So by going like this, right, by going here, she's retracting. You can feel it actually too. If you take your arms, guys, and you pull like this, you will feel a pinch in your low back, your upper back, just below your shoulder blades. So she's doing that while she is in a prone position. She's laying face down. So she's working against gravity as she pinches her lower trapezius muscle. So this is activating exactly the opposite of our upper trapezius. And take a look at her head position. This is an opportunity for her to focus on tucking her chin. So we can get a little bit more deep cervical flexor action here. And she's going to be contracting her upper back muscles that are antagonistic or synergistic, but being sort of inhibited to these muscles right here, right? So they're either the opposite or they are the muscle that really was supposed to be doing the job, but can't because Robin's taking over for Batman. That's always my go-to analogy, right? A synergist is overeager. It's doing all the work of, you know, the main muscle there. So marching and floor prone cobra are really good core options for clients who have these particular problems. We'd activate the transverse abdominis. Meanwhile, you know, look at her spine, right? She has to pull her upper body just barely up off the floor. Her spine has to stabilize. Great. That's awesome. That's a great way for us to, rather than just moving our spine a whole bunch and using the erector spinae, now she's just going to be activating the spinal stabilizers. Those are called our multifidus muscles. And then we've got kind of a fun one here. This is in your textbook as a balance exercise. This is called the single leg windmill. And this exercise can be a pain in the butt, man. Like it looks easy, but it's sometimes pretty challenging actually. And what it is, it's a balance exercise. Let's see, I do like this white background because it's easy to see, but he's not quite doing it perfectly. Come on, give me a good preview. There we go. Now she's going both ways. Okay, so here's the single leg windmill. So you're gonna stand on one leg, so there's our balance, right? So now she's activating her foot, her knee, her hips, all of her core, and then she is going to rotate down, keeping her arms in a nice straight line in both directions. So you'll notice that her spine is doing very minimal movement here. She's not moving her balance leg at all, or at least she's trying not to, right? And she's just rotating through the upper body slightly on both sides. So when you go into this position like this, and you rotate in both directions, that's a really great balance exercise that moves you through a full range of motion. And what does she get a chance to do in terms of like relating this to our problem, right? What does she get a chance to do? She gets a chance to retract her shoulder blades, drop her shoulders away from her ears, and really try to focus on stabilizing her entire scapula while her arms are in this outward position, rather than doing this kind of thing, right? And so we as the coach, we're giving her the type of balance exercise that she needs. I could have had her do a single leg lift and chop, you know, where she was standing on one leg and doing something kind of like this, right? I could have had her do a single leg balance with reach, but I wanted to do the kind of thing that really focuses on pulling the shoulder blades back into retraction and activating her lower and middle trapezius muscles, right? Which are the muscles that pull you like that. So, and then this one doesn't really tie to much. This last one here is just a reactive exercise, which is what we put in the movement prep section. It's not really going to do much for their forward head posture. It's just a cone jump to stabilization. So we would have our client have maybe like some cones set up. They would jump over them. Eventually. Boop, and then hold the landing for 3 to 5 seconds. What did I have? It was a frontal plane. No, sagittal. Yeah. So it'd be this version here. He would just jump straight forward. I could also have him do it in frontal plane. Like this version here. There's the frontal plane, right? I could even have him do the transverse plane if they did this version here. And he'll twist. Boop, there you go. So with a beginning client, that's a really good jumping exercise. Does it have much to do with our forward head posture or shoulder elevation? Not really. But again, the purpose of this isn't necessarily to be the most realistic, real life, oh God, warm up and movement prep. The goal here is to kind of show you a classic sort of textbook version of things, right? We did our foam rolling, we did our static stretches, we did a little bit of cardio, and then we threw our client into core, balance, and reactive exercises. Whoops, what did I do? So, questions, comments, concerns. How do y'all feel about that?
Great.
Yeah. Starting to see how it kind of clear it up, Lori. You see how that is retracting those antagonist muscles we talked about? Not always, by the way. Not every time like perfectly, right? But in a lot of cases. And after this, right, that's when we get into our regular workout, right? Here we go. You know, let's say I want them doing push-ups and pull-ups and, you know, walking lunges. and burpees, you know, like there's a body weight routine my client could do at home. You know what I mean? I can set all that up in the resistance section later, but for now, we turned the overactive stuff off, we turned the underactive stuff on, and then we did the same thing for our cool down. I did have the lats in there. I'll delete that. What's that?
All right, good.
All righty.
Consent.
So one more for upper body dysfunction today, guys. I know I'm throwing a lot at you today with a second list, but one of the things we saw in the overhead squat, right? Arms falling forward. So what the heck is causing that arms to fall forward, right? What's pulling our shoulder blades down? Well, I got a little video here to show you that is going to explain it for you. This is Rick again, I think.
Exercise.
Yeah, this guy rocks. So here we go. A little video explaining arms fall forward.
Hey y'all, it's Rick and Annie. We're going to be going through an upper extremity corrective exercise series, and we're probably just going to do it on one side to keep it short. So just to give you a heads up on what we're going to do. Annie, we've decided, has upper extremity postural distortion. So in an overhead squat, her arms fall forward. So we're going to do a release technique. So we're going to inhibit her lats and her pecs. We're then going to have her lengthen it. Then we're going to do an activation technique. And then we're going to do an integrated exercise to help strengthen and bring everything together. So, Annie, you ready?
Yes.
All right, come on down. Let's get that foam roller. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to have Annie go right basically into her armpit, but on the back side of it. So Annie's going to be rolling, not quite even her lats yet, but she's getting in that area with the tight muscles in the posterior side of the shoulder. And then as she rolls farther up, so the roller's coming down on her, there's a place called the scapula, right? So, or the shoulder blade. That inferior angle, that very last portion, the lats connect there, and you'll see when she hits it, because she's going to make a face. All right, so when Annie feels that little portion right there, it gets to be pretty tight, and that's where a lats connection. It's a nice place to release from. So Annie, you got that spot? Now remember, we're going to do a couple of releases. We'll hold minimum of 30 seconds to let that autogenic inhibition take place, let the muscle mechanoreceptors relax themselves. And then we're going to go right into the next exercise. So Annie, let's go right into the next release. So what she's going to do, I'm going to have her roll back down a little bit. And just because I want to make sure that she's not rolling anything but muscle here, slowly now roll forward so it's right here, just at the bend of the armpit. And she's going to do a release right there of the pec major, and the pec minor also happens to be in that area. Now, this is a heads up for you. If your client, and you need to ask, don't just assume that they don't feel something. Ask your client, do you feel any numbness or tingling? If they do, that's called not good. So make sure that they don't have any tingling, any numbness, because they're on a nerve or blood supply or both. So hop off of that spot, find another spot, make sure it's only muscle. Annie, you getting a nice little release there? Fantastic. So those are our two inhibitory techniques. I'm going to have you flip right over so you're face down into a child's pose. And the child's pose is what we're going to use to lengthen those lats out. And it'll actually lengthen the pecs out as well. Now, there's multiple ways to do it, but this is the way we're going to do it. And what I've done, I have her go into this position because she stretches the lats by having a posterior tilt here. She's reaching the arm forward, and I'm going to help her just a little bit. I'm going to brace her a little bit here, and then I'm just going to roll that forward, but I'm locking her hand on there so her arm reaches forward. That way she's getting some scapular elevation, getting additional stretch in the lat here on this side. Do you feel that stretch in there, Annie? So if I wanted to get a little more of a stretch, then I could actually have her shift her backside that way. So she create like a crescent moon here, so she's lengthening the lat this direction. All right, so let's go ahead and have you come up. Let's go ahead and start some activation exercises. So come on up this way. And the activation exercise I'm going to have you do is I'll actually have you squat down a little bit, and you're going to go into your YTAs, or this is what NASM calls their combo number 1, right? So she's going to go up into a Y position, so Y, And this is a nice activation for those lower traps right here. Go ahead into your T position. Nice T position. Again, retraction, but now we have some horizontal abduction, so we're strengthening posterior delt. And then come back into your YTA position. And she's got a nice little external rotation here. She's squeezing her traps. She's retracting her shoulder blades. And you may even get folks that are really firing up in their triceps. And we're not going for this tricep activation. So if that's the case, just have them come out a little wider and squeeze back more. Good, go ahead and do another one. Y position, this exercise is called scaption. So she's doing a scaption here. Go ahead into your T, this is a reverse fly, and then let's go ahead into your A position. And if you guys are familiar with our work, this is what we do, call a floor cobra, except we're standing now, so this is a standing bent over cobra. Let's go into our combo number 2, Annie. So what she's gonna do now is she's gonna go into a row. So this is a high row, not an upright row, it's a high row. She's getting her posterior delt really active here and doing her retraction. Now she's going to rotate. She's going to do a shoulder press. Now it's really firing up these stabilizers in the scapula. Let's do a lat pull down. Good, rotate in and dive into the pool. Let's get one more. Go ahead and pull it back, rotate up, overhead press, lat pull down, rotate down, and dive into the pool. Very nice. Stand up, face towards me. Now we're going to go into our integrated exercise. So I'm going to have Annie do a squat to a high row. And again, a high row is this position, not here, because I don't want those.
This integrated part, by the way, would not be in your movement prep. This is something that would probably be in the rest of it. This would be in like the resistance section. This would be a meat and potatoes sort of main exercise. But he's kind of going through it here.
Lats continually pulling her into this kind of protracted position. So she's going to go up, bring the elbows up high, keep that upper trap area, the posterior delt's quite active. And I'm going to give her a pull from this angle. So Annie's going to go ahead and squat. She's going to drive forward, squeeze the glutes, and then, yeah, there you are. Good. I'm going to bring it up a little bit higher. It was almost turning into an upright row. So go ahead, and that's much, much better. And you'll notice there should be a straight line between where her elbows are and the line of this. So if I come down too low, she's going into an upright row, and that's not a great position for the shoulder to be in. So we're just doing high rows. Let's give me a few more. Squeezing those glutes, hold it up at the top. And 3. Good. Abs, glutes tight. Good. Nice retraction. And one more time. Hold it. Hold it. Relax. Very nice. Cool. Thank you, Annie. And this is a nice little corrective exercise series. You guys go back through and make sure you look at this is the highlighted.
So with arms falling forward, what's causing those actions, right? We see, here's our client, right? This version right here where the arms just aren't lining up, staying, and they're not bisecting the ears anymore, they're falling downwards. So, what is that action, right? Well, we're looking at having trouble. They're being pulled this way, right? So they're being pulled downwards rather than staying up nice and tall. So what muscle pulls downwards? Your latissimus dorsi, right? It's literally in charge of shoulder extension. So your lats, those big pizza muscles on the back, right? They pull downwards. They also pull downwards this way. So in 2 ways, your lats are going to be our overactive muscle on this list here. So we are definitely going to see working on the latissimus dorsi. Let me pull up the list here. Sorry, NASM resources, downloads. So arms falling forward, big one, latissimus dorsi. This is honestly probably just the main one, right? Then we're also going to see your pectoralis major and your pectoralis minor here, which are your 2 pec muscles, right? When we look at the pectoralis major, it's the one you're thinking of. It's the big one that kind of covers your entire chest, right? There's your pectoralis major. Now, this muscle runs from your sternum, a couple of your ribs, runs over onto the humerus here. So its job is to pull your arms this way. right? And then you've got your pectoralis minor, which lives in the same area underneath that pectoralis major. So it actually lives underneath it, but rather than grabbing the humerus, right? We saw this one, right? This one grabs your humerus, right? Oh no, I opened the wrong thing. Sorry, that. Then minor, which is that. And that button. Okay, so there's your major, right? It's grabbing right here. Your minor grabs this little knob right here, runs into these 3 ribs, grabs your scapula. So your major pulls your arms like this. Your minor pulls your arms like that. It pulls your shoulder blades forward. So now, when we're trying to understand why these 2 muscles are on our list for an arms falling forward situation, here's what I want you guys to do at home right now. Go ahead and roll your shoulders forward like this. And now try to raise your arms as high over your head as you can. Literally impossible. So because those muscles are pulling your scapula into the wrong position, and by the way, what's causing that is this knob right here on the bone. See this little knob right here? That is actually what's keeping you from being able to move it up. It's grinding onto the bone right here, or it's this knob right here. Depends. If you're trying to raise it out to the side, you got them rounded and you can't get it up. That's because this knob is clipping the bone right here, and this knob is clipping the bone right there. So now you won't be able to get your arms up. They have to fall forward, right? So there's our arms falling forward situation. And then we've got one more muscle on the list here, which is your teres major. Your teres major is a muscle we talked about yesterday. It's a rotator cuff. Well, technically, it's actually not part of your rotator cuff, but it is in the area with all of your other rotator cuff muscles. So it's on your scapula here, and it grabs the front of your humerus. So it kind of works its way under your armpit and grabs the front. It's in charge of pulling your arm this way. It rotates your arm inward. So again, when you have a client with like protracted shoulders, and then they are also rounding their shoulders like this, it's going to be really freaking hard to raise your arms up overhead. So those are our overactive muscles. Now, we can't foam roll our teres major. It's too tiny to be able to get into there. But we can foam roll your latissimus dorsi, right? I'm actually going to take that out of there as well. I'm going to try to simplify this. We can foam roll your latissimus dorsi by getting up under the arm there and kind of loosening up all the lat muscles. We can get into the pec minor there. Not so much with like a classic foam roller. Your pec minor is kind of hard to hit. You'll need to use a lacrosse ball. Just a foam roller is just too big, and this muscle's too small. So you're gonna, I mean, you can see people try to do it, but honestly, it doesn't work very well. So you're just going to take a lacrosse ball and kind of place it. This guy's going into the wall, like this guy's here. You gotta put your nose on the wall. Don't do that. Like, just go over to a doorway. And then you can, place it on the doorway, and you can kind of put your body, past the door. Or you could use that theracane we talked about earlier, right? You can always dive it, kind of dig it in right into that pec minor. And you can feel it, by the way. If you kind of pinch under your arm there, you'll feel this kind of flap. That flap is right where your pec minor is at. So we put a little bit of pressure there, and you can see again for the pec minor, we say use a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball because again, a foam roller is going to be too big. So we are going to do a ball lat stretch. That's going to stretch out our latissimus dorsi. So again, we take our arms up just like we saw the other day. We are going to do a static pectoral wall stretch, which looks like this. Basically, you're going to drive your arm back because this muscle wants to do this, right? It wants to bring your arms this way. So we're going to open it up. we're going to drive it back in this direction. So there's our, this is called the doorway stretch. You can do this version. This works pretty well. But there's your classic wall stretch. Now I will say one adjustment that I give my clients, you will see most pectoral wall stretches have you going straight like this, where it's just like 90 degrees. That's a better stretch for your pec major. If you want to get your pec minor, you can do this version here where she's actually raising her arm upwards, or you could still do the bent elbow version and just raise it up about 6 inches and then pull back. I find that when you elevate, it gets a little more of your pec minor, or you could do both, guys. Don't be afraid to do both of them. You know, start 30 seconds here, do your other side, and then come back and go up and then go back, right? So that's your pec minor. Now, your teres major stretch, this one can be challenging because, again, this is an internal rotator. So how are we going to stretch it? We need to do external rotation. So that's actually exactly the opposite of what you want to do. Do not go across the body like this because that's only going to round forward. In order to get your teres major kind of stretched out, you need to pull your arm into external rotation. So one of the best ways to do this is, she's in the wrong half of this stretch. She's pulled, there we go. Okay, it's a GIF. You can go like this, tuck your arm back, and then pull your shoulder blade back like this. And that can give you a little bit of a teres major stretch. Or my favorite version is actually doing the wall stretch. Let's see here. See if I can find this. Yeah, there we go. So do this version here where you actually go up to a wall, grab it with your arm, and then you step forward. And when you step forward, it will pull your arm back, right? You will pull it into external rotation. This is an internal rotator. So we stretch it by going into external rotation. Oh, there we go. There's the pec stretch I wanted. Yeah, go just slightly higher, and that'll get your pec minor. So those are the stretches for our, shoulder extender, our shoulder protractor, and our shoulder internal rotator. So we stretched all those things by doing, shoulder flexion, scapular retraction, and shoulder external rotation. Then again, we throw them on the cardio, 5 minutes, get their blood pumping, right? Corba. So then we're going to do that isoprone cobra again, same as last time. It's just a really great way to activate the upper back. Now in this version, or not in this version, this is the same exact exercise, right? But our underactive muscles here are really similar. Middle trapezius, lower trapezius, rhomboids, and then we got one extra one, which is your posterior deltoid. Posterior deltoid, back of your shoulder, okay? It's this little muscle on the back of your shoulder right here. Whoa, good, holy shoulders. Sorry. So back of the shoulders right there. So that's going to be, we see middle traps, lower traps. The rhomboids would be right here underneath, and then posterior deltoid. All the muscles that pull us back this way. So we're going to be doing a lot of rowing actions, right? You can see it on our arms here. There's all of the stuff this direction. So the isoprone cobra is great because it is scapular retraction. She's strengthening her rhomboids, middle and lower trapezius muscles, right? Then we've got a quadruped opposite arm, opposite leg raise, because that's what NASM likes to call it. It drives me crazy. It's the freaking bird dog. That's what everybody calls this. No one calls it the quadruped opposite arm, opposite leg raise. It's the bird dog. So here you know, she's getting a little bit of hip extension. You know, does that have anything to do with our problem with arms falling forward? No, but it's awesome. So let's get some glute work, you know. But she is going to raise her opposite arm up, right? And that is going to focus on shoulder extension. So now she's stabilizing her scapula with those trapezius and rhomboid muscles we talked about, right? She's by doing shoulder extension, shoulder flexion, instead of shoulder extension. By doing shoulder flexion, she's strengthening all those muscles that are really weak, right? She's turning them on using a little bit of her core. So again, we got 2 core exercises. Then we've got a single leg lift and chop, which is just a really great balance exercise that also focuses on shoulder flexion, right? Raising the shoulder blades up overhead while also getting a little bit of balance now. Further core work, but now we're activating the feet. And, you know, those rotator cuff muscles and all the muscles in the upper back are all working to stabilize as we move through this full range of motion. And then for our reactive exercise, again, this is upper body dysfunction. So reactive exercises really aren't going to kind of tie directly towards what we're talking about, but we're going to do a cone jump. I did change it up from the first version. We're going to do the frontal version, which means our client's going to jump to the side.
The cone jump forward?
Nope, not forward. Well, here's the squat jump, you know, but you would jump over cones. So frontal plane, right? Just because it's slightly different than the first one. I just want to have a different example there. So, and there we go. We have turned off our shoulder protractors and we've turned on our shoulder retractors. And that's going to get our clients to pull their arms back. And now, you know, again, round your shoulders, guys. Try to raise your arms up. It's impossible. But pull your shoulder blades back and you'll be able to raise them, you know, behind your freaking ears if you do it the right way, you know. Ideally, we want to have that good shoulder retraction, you know. And that's it. That's what we do with those type of clients. Then again, we can get into the normal stuff, right? We can be like, hey, it's leg day, you know, barbell squat, deadlift, the split lunges, whatever you can do, you know, get into your normal routine. But that is, you know, there's some examples there. And that's about it. That's all I got for you guys today. Oh, we lost Lorian again. How's everybody feeling?
Good?
Yeah?
Good. Great.
Good.
Cool.
Thank you.
You guys feel like, for those of you with the upper body, the grounding, you feel like you're going to go do some of these now? Prone cobras for everybody. That's your homework.
It's back day for me today.
Is it? There you go. Yeah. Get those rows in.
Yep.
So speaking of homework, we do have homework 4 out today. It's our last piece of homework for this class. So hop on Canvas and knock that out, guys. And that's about all I got for you. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
All right. See you, everybody.
See you later.